Obama said of you, he called you, just after your selection, a decent man, a family man, an articulate spokesman for the Romney vision, but he said that's a vision that I profoundly disagree with. What would you say about him?
I think that's correct. I think it is a vision that we have fundamental differences on. I think the president himself is a good family man. We have a very different idea of how to take this country forward. The president has given us utter failure when it comes to creating jobs and bringing fiscal discipline to Washington. If we stick with the same plan, we'll get more of the same results. More taxing, more spending, more borrowing, more regulating. And I think we have a different vision. We are offering solutions. The Romney-Ryan plan for a stronger middle class is about offering solutions to get us back on track, create jobs, balance the budget, get people back to work.
Medicare is not the only issue in this campaign, but at the moment it seems to be. And your campaign is going up today with an ad that I understand is a pretty big buy, 30-second ad on the attack. Let's take a look at it.
You paid into Medicare for years. Every paycheck. Now when you need it, Obama has cut $716 billion from Medicare. Why? To pay for Obamacare. So now the money you paid for your guaranteed health care is going to a massive new government program that's not for you. The Romney-Ryan plan protects Medicare benefits for today's seniors and strengthens the plan for the next generation.
I'm Mitt Romney, and I approve this message.
So that ad attacks President Obama for the Medicare savings that are contemplated in Obamacare, estimating it now at over $700 billion. Right. Doesn't your budget also contemplate very major savings from Medicare on something like the same amount?
Only President Obama raids $716 billion from the Medicare program. He cut $716 billion from the Medicare program to pay for Obamacare.
Right.
We don't do that.
Well, what you make savings? How much?
The point, I joined the Romney ticket, and what Mitt Romney is proposing to do is repeal all of Obamacare. I have voted repeatedly in Congress to repeal all of Obamacare, including this cut of $716 billion to pay for Obamacare. So what's very important here, and a lot of seniors don't know this, is that they turned Medicare into a piggy bank to finance Obamacare. The Obama campaign thinks it's an achievement that they raided Medicare to pay for Obamacare, and we want to point that out, and we want to restore those cuts to prevent that raid of the Medicare program.
I get that. You're not saying, though, that you don't contemplate in your budget planning significant savings, upwards of $500 billion in Medicare, though, are you?
No. We can get into complicated baseline issues, but that's the current law. So what we do is we keep with the current law in our budget. But what Mitt Romney has proposed, the current law is the current spending on Medicare.
Right.
So, which was changed by Obamacare. What we are proposing, what Mitt Romney is proposing, is end the raid of the Medicare program, restore that money so that it goes back to Medicare and doesn't finance Obamacare.
So you don't contemplate making any savings in Medicare?
Well, we will make savings in Medicare for the next generation, but what we're proposing is to strengthen the program for current seniors. Here's the issue, Britt. We think Medicare is a promise that was made to seniors who have already retired. And so we propose no changes to anybody in or near retirement so that the guarantee of Medicare is for them. That's a clear contrast with President Obama's plan, which is now in law, which raids Medicare by $716 billion to pay for Obamacare. We restore that so that the promise of Medicare is there for current seniors.
But it is the case that in the budget that you have passed through the House of Representatives, significant savings of upwards of $500 billion in Medicare
we do not add cuts to Medicare program in the House budget. We don't take more cuts to Medicare. We simply prevent the rate of Medicare so that those dollars go to extending the life of Medicare.
And you said those dollars go to extending the life of now I'm a little unclear as to how that works. You make savings to prevent the program from going under, or what? How is this?
So here's the issue. What President Obama is trying to do with his Medicare plan is he's trying to count a dollar twice. He's trying to suggest that these Medicare cuts can help Medicare. It doesn't, because he's taking those dollars from Medicare to spend on Obamacare. We prevent that from happening in the House budget. But let's be clear here, Britt. I am on the Romney ticket, and what Mitt Romney is proposing is to repeal all of Obamacare. And in the House, repeatedly, I have voted with that position. I support that position. I'm pleased to support the position of getting rid of every piece of Obamacare, including the cuts to Medicare, which are used to pay for Obamacare.
Now, the budget plan that you are now supporting would get to balance when?
Well, there's different. The budget plan that Mitt Romney is supporting gets us down to 20% of GDP government spending by 2016. That means get the size of government back to where it historically has been. What President Obama has done is he has brought the size of government to as high as it hasn't been since World War II. We want to reduce the size of government so we can have more economic freedom.
I get that, but what about balance?
Well, I don't know exactly when it balances because we haven't, I want to get wonky on you, but we haven't run the numbers on that specific plan.
Right.
The plans that we've offered in the House balance the budget. I would put a contrast. President Obama never once, ever, has offered a plan to ever balance the budget. The United States Senate, they haven't passed a budget in 3 years.
I understand that, but your own budget that you
You're talking about the House budget.
I'm talking about the House budget.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is your budget is going to be a central issue in this plan.
The House budget.
When does that contemplate?
The House budget doesn't budget until the 2030s under the current what we call measurement of the CBO baseline. We believe if we get the economy growing, if we get people back to work, we'll balance the budget within 10 years.
So how much more debt?
But the key here, Britt, is we got to get people back to work.
Right.
We got to have economic growth. Mitt Romney has a plan for doing that. We have this 5 points for a plan for a stronger middle class. Energy independence, skills to get people back to work with job training programs, trade that works so we can build things here, sell them overseas, get the deficit and debt under control, help small businesses that are the engine of economic growth. Doing these things, we think will produce opportunity, economic growth, job creation. If we do that, then we'll balance the budget far faster. Economic growth, along with fiscal discipline and spending cuts, is the key to balancing the budget.
That raises this question. Your selection has brought into focus your reputation and standing as someone who wants to trim the federal government down to size and is prepared to take on and reform entitlement programs and so forth. That doesn't sound, I think, to the average person like growth talk. That sounds like green. I understand, but I want you to explain that. That doesn't sound like growth talk. It sounds like green eye shade budget talk.
You know me better than that. Mitt Romney and I share the same ideas on how to get this country back on track. You have to cut spending. We're borrowing 40 cents of every dollar we spend. If we keep borrowing like President Obama has proposed, that itself is a drag on economic growth. All of these deficits, all of this debt is one of the greatest threats to our economy and job creation. So you have to get this deficit and debt under control to create jobs. In addition, we have pro-growth policies, fundamental tax reform, energy independence, job training, better trade agreements to produce more sales of the things we make here in America. Economic growth combined with fiscal discipline is the secret to getting people back to work.
When will we see the Romney plan in all its particulars laid out?
You have seen more details from Mitt Romney on fiscal policy, on saving entitlements, on getting back to work than the incumbent president of the United States has
Well, wait a
offered.
minute. He proposed a full-blown budget.
His budget didn't even try to balance the budget.
I get that.
His budget proposes more debt, more spending, more borrowing, more regulating, and it gave us 4 years of trillion-dollar deficits, and he's proposing more of the same.
Let me ask you about your relationship to Mitt Romney. People who saw the two of you campaigning together in Wisconsin, back during the Wisconsin primary, noticed that for a while you were just introducing him as a local boy, introducing the guy from out of state. Before it was over, you were basically sharing the stage. What happened between you two men during those days out there?
We spent about 5 days on the road, 14-hour or so days, and in between all of those stops, driving from Appleton to Green Bay to Janesville to Milwaukee, we got to know each other. We conversed on policy issues, on where to take the country, and sooner or later we basically started sharing the microphones at these town hall meetings, and we just kind of developed a chemistry with one another and a mutual understanding of each other.
Did you have a sense then that you had a special place with him, that he had taken a shine to you, in effect?
I don't know if I had a special place, but it was very clear we thought the same on these issues. When he asked me to join the ticket, he basically said to me, you share my values, and you have the kind of experience that could be a complement to my experience to getting this country back on track, to creating jobs, to getting people back to work, to saving this country from a debt crisis.
So when the call came, I know you said yes, but did you at that time think, well, this is the fight's now going to be joined, budgets are going to be at the center of this, my budget-cutting reputation is going to be at the center of this? Was that?
Yes, I'm excited about that.
Right.
I'm eager to join this
Now
debate because we owe the country a clear choice and different solutions.
So let's get back to this ad. This ad suggests, and I gather it's going to be seen a lot of places, that you and Governor Romney think that Medicare which has been a very difficult issue for Republicans for a very long time. And polls suggest that people almost automatically think Republicans are hostile to Medicare. Can be a winning issue for you. How?
Absolutely. Because we're the ones who are offering a plan to save Medicare, to protect Medicare, to strengthen Medicare. We're the ones who are not raiding Medicare to pay for Obamacare. We're the ones who are repealing President Obama's 15-person bureaucratic board that will put price controls on Medicare that will lead to denied care for current seniors. We're the ones continuing the guarantee of Medicare for people in or near retirement. And you have to reform it for the younger generation in order to make the commitment stick for the current generation. President Obama is actually damaging Medicare for current seniors. It's irrefutable. And that's why I think this is a debate we want to have, and that's the debate we're going to win.
Democrats argue that when the time that the people, I know everybody from 55 and under is covered here, but 55 and over is exempt. I understand that. But Democrats argue that when people who do come of age and face the new Medicare that will exist, will end up having something like $6,300 less.
That's a misleading. It was a misleading talking point when it came out a few years ago. It's even more misleading now.
Well, what's wrong with it?
Because it's not accurate. But more to the point, the kind of reforms we're talking about are bipartisan reforms. Bipartisan reforms in Congress today, they originated from the Clinton Commission in the late 1990s. These are reforms that have been championed by both Republicans and Democrats on how best to save Medicare so that for future seniors, younger people, it works like the plan I have in Congress, like federal employees have, where we give more for the poor, the middle income, and the sick, less for the wealthy. But more importantly, we don't want President Obama's 15 bureaucrats making decisions. Seniors get to choose how their Medicare benefits are delivered to them. We think that's the best way to save Medicare versus raiding the program like President Obama proposes and having these bureaucrats cut Medicare in a way that will lead to denied care for current seniors.
Where does the $6,300 number come from?
It's an old CBO number from an old budget proposal that we believe is very misleading.
From whose budget proposal?
From my old budget proposal of a couple of years ago. What it did is it compared Medicare proposals to the status quo Medicare, which is unsustainable. Under that kind of measuring stick, you could level the same charge against President Obama. But here's the issue, Britt.
So what you're saying is that money that $6,300 would not be available because
under
Medicare
Obama's
would
plan either, because Medicare is going bankrupt and we're trying to save it. What President Obama does, instead of shoring up Medicare's finances, he's taking money from Medicare to spend on Obamacare. But here's the issue, Britt. The president can't run on his record. It's a failure of leadership. There are no jobs being created. 23 million people are struggling to find work. He promised unemployment would be below 8%. It's been above 8% his entire election. He promised to cut the deficit in half. $4 trillion plus deficits. So he can't run on his record. He hasn't changed. He hasn't moderated his positions. So he's going to run on these attacks. He's going to try and attack us with misleading attacks. So the Hope and Change campaign of 2008 has become the blame and attack campaign of 2012.
Can you broadly outline, and these budgets they're contemplated 10 years of spending and taxation and so forth. Can you broadly outline the difference between your plan and his with numbers?
President Obama's plan?
And yours.
Sure. We put the budget on a path to balance.
I get that.
We get government spending under control to where it historically has been.
So how much less do you spend than he would?
Well, under the trillions of dollars. Under the budget that passed the House, we grew spending at 3.5% a year instead of President Obama's 4.5% a year or something about that. No, 3% a year versus President Obama's 4.5% a year. The House budget was a $5.3 trillion cut from the Obama budget. But again, what we're doing is we're offering the Romney-Ryan plan.
Right.
And that plan is very clear about how to get jobs created, how to get growth back in this economy, get spending under control. And the problem with the President Obama's budget is it will bring us toward a debt crisis. It will give us more job loss.
So you're talking about a $5.3 trillion dollar difference over 10 years, roughly speaking.
That was the House budget.
That's all right. That's spending. Tax revenues. How much less tax revenue do you contemplate over the 10
Actually,
years?
revenues under any of these budget scenarios increase. That's the point.
Okay.
Through economic growth.
But how much? What's the difference?
They go as a part of President Obama's proposing about a $4 trillion tax increase.
Right.
That tax increase we think will do great damage to economic growth. It's a tax increase on job creators and successful small businesses. We propose not to raise taxes, but to clear up the tax loopholes. Get rid of special interest loopholes so we can lower tax rates for everybody, families and small businesses, to produce certainty and job creation. And that revenue line is going to be at or above where it historically has been.
Right, but roughly how much?
It's about 18.5% of GDP.
Right. How much money? How much in dollar terms you estimated him at $4 trillion, right?
Yeah,
So
we
how much
do not have that $4 trillion. We don't have that trillion. We don't have. It's about I'm doing this off the top of my head. It's about $3.6 trillion in increased taxes that he's proposing. We don't increase it by $3.6 trillion.
But do you anticipate increased revenues in a certain amount that would give you a number?
Well, what we do in budgets, and this is the way it works, is we target a revenue line as a percent of the economy, and then we target spending as a percent of the economy, bring those two together so that they balance the budget. So we don't do it in the way you're asking the question. It doesn't really work like that. What we're saying is, don't have these massive tax increases that President Obama is promising, which are uniquely hitting successful small businesses that create jobs. Don't forget, 8 out of 10 businesses in America file their taxes as individual people.
And you answer the charge that you're planning massive tax cuts for the wealthy at the expense of the middle class. How do you respond to that allegation?
What we're saying is get rid of special interest loopholes and deductions that are uniquely enjoyed by the wealthy so we can lower tax rates for everybody. Let me put it this way. People who use income tax shelters are the people who are in the top tax brackets. Take away the tax shelters, more of their income is subject to taxation. That allows us to lower tax rates for everybody, families, small businesses, and that helps us create jobs and prosperity. Other countries are lowering their tax rates on their businesses, while President Obama is proposing we raise our tax rates on our businesses. It's going to make us less competitive. It's going to cost more jobs. The Congressional Budget Office even says if all these tax increases occur, it could put us back into a recession. We're saying prevent the Obama tax increases from hitting the economy because we know it's going to cost us jobs, and clean up the tax code. Stop picking winners and losers through the tax code. Get rid of the tax shelters that are enjoyed by the wealthy so you can lower tax rates and more of their income will be subject to taxation.
Will we soon see a plan that's specific about which loopholes to close?
That is something that we think we should do in the light of day through Congress, unlike how Obamacare was passed. We don't want a backroom deal. What the Ways and Means Committee did, what the House passed, is to have a process for tax reform so that we do this in the front of the public. The point I'm trying to say is we want to get feedback from Americans about what priorities in the tax code should be kept and what special interest loopholes we want to get rid of.
You know the numbers better than anybody. Can you have the revenue required to meet the budgets you're planning without eliminating such deductions as the home mortgage interest deduction or the deduction for municipal bond?
Yes, there is what we call room for priorities in the tax code that are broad-based. What we don't want to do is have corporate welfare, crony capitalism in the tax code, special interest tax giveaways. And we want to make sure that middle-income taxpayers are the ones who enjoy these benefits, not higher-income taxpayers. And so with all of those in mind, you do have room for some of these higher priorities within the tax code, but that's a debate we need to have with the country in public. We don't want to cut some kind of backroom deal like they did in Harry Reid's office in passing Obamacare.
All right, a couple of last things. It is said that you're a disciple of Ayn Rand. Obviously, you read Ayn Rand as a young man, and you found the books compelling.
Her novels,
compelling.
Right.
She writes about these people with 100-proof conservative views, particularly on economic matters. What is your view of Ayn Rand? Are you an Ayn Rand disciple? Is that a fair charge?
I really enjoyed her novels, Atlas Shrugged in particular. It triggered my interest in economics. That's where I got into studying economics. That's why I wanted to study the whole field of economics. I later in life learned about what her philosophy was. It's called objectivism. It's something I completely disagree with. It's an atheistic philosophy. But I think what she's done is she came from communism. She showed how the pitfalls of socialism can hurt the economy, can hurt people, families, and individuals. And that, to me, was a very compelling novel, which says freedom, free enterprise, liberty is so much better than totalitarianism, than socialism. Those novels I thought were interesting, but her philosophy, which is quite a bit different, is something that I just don't agree with.
You have been quoted as saying, speaking admiringly of comments made by an Ayn Rand character to the effect that the Federal Reserve Bank should not be engaging in holding down interest rates or cheap
quantitative easing. I really worry about our monetary policy. I think it's been very loose for very long, and I worry that we have our monetary policy on a collision course with our fiscal policy, and it could end ugly with a real inflation problem if we don't watch ourselves. And so I think we need to get to the days where we can start normalizing our monetary policy so that our dollar is secure. There's nothing.
So you would oppose further easing?
Yeah, I don't think easing is called for. I think in the crisis There were things that the Federal Reserve had to do, that they did do, that were necessary. But I do think the Federal Reserve is basically bailing out a fundamental failure of fiscal policy, which is a failure of President Obama to actually get our fiscal house in order to create jobs. So you have the Federal Reserve, which is playing with our monetary policy, bailing out the fact that President Obama has offered no leadership to get the deficit under control and to create jobs and economic growth.